We'll do it live.
Great Jimmy Dore coming in here. What's that, Caleb?
We're doing it live.
All right, we'll do it live. I have no problem with that, especially when I'm so anxious to get to Jimmy, and we don't need to roll anything into him. What's that, Susan?
Do the intro again for the podcast.
Do the intro.
Start over. Yeah, because that was clumsy.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm welcoming Jimmy Dore today. We're going to talk a little bit of the USAID, or as they say in France, USAID. And of course, Jimmy is the star of multiple Comedy Central specials, author of the bestseller, Your Country is Just Not That Into You. Host of the Jimmy Dore Show. It has been fabulously successful. You can follow it on Rumble, The Jimmy Dore Show, D-O-R-E, and also Jimmy_Dore on X. Jimmy Dore, JIMMY.com. Let's see, am I leaving anything else out? He's one of our favorite guests. He always has a lot to say. Let's see, do I need to wait until the countdown goes all the way to 0, Caleb, or can we throw it to the
Just go ahead and throw it to the intro, and if the intro doesn't play, we'll just hop right back to you and do it live.
All right.
And to the audience,
we're having some video.
We are getting it fixed. We installed new memory, and the new graphics card will get here as soon as they're available for sale.
Yeah, we're trying our best to fix the technical problems. But hey, listen, you're here to hear Jimmy Dore and me, and that's what we're going to get to. We've got a lot to talk about. Things are moving so fast in our government, and I want to hear what Jimmy has to say about it. We'll be back with more thoughts right after this. Here's Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore Live is what you want to go see. Check it out on Rumble. Is there other places you want them to watch you? Are you in YouTube jail like the rest of us?
I've managed to navigate through YouTube, so I'm still on YouTube. I'm still on Rumble, and I have a lot of live stand-up dates coming up. That's what's behind me.
Oh, well, let's, how can we do that, Caleb? Can we push those out somehow? Oh, now we're having all kinds of fun technical issues.
Ghost in the system.
The last time we had Jimmy on the show, if you remember correctly, that was the episode that Spotify took down. They took it down for like a week or two until we protested.
So they only go after Jimmy when he's on our show.
All sorts of issues today that they don't want the message getting out. So you guys just go and I'll make it happen.
All right, excellent. So Jimmy, there's so much going on. There's so many, obviously there's so much to talk about. We have RFK Jr. being confirmed now. We have Tulsi Gabbard confirmed. It seems like Kash Patel is going to get confirmed. Essentially everyone that has been up in front of the Senate is likely to be now in positions of authority in the administration as cabinet officials. What I feel like RFK Jr. is going to be Doge 2.0, but with his terrible swift sword focused on food and pharma and medicine and medical publications and medical research. You agree?
I hope so. Fingers crossed. I mean, that's the indication. And I have to admit, there's a small part of me that is worried. I'm happy. There's never been a better nominee for HHS in my lifetime, or for DNI in my lifetime. I'm excited to see what Kash Patel does. I think I'm basically what Trump is doing in a lot of areas is, he's being a disruptor. And I think that's a positive. I think it's good to have transparency in our government. I think it's good to do these audits. A lot of people are freaked out because of who's doing them, right? They think, well, it's Trump and Elon Musk. There's no way this could be good. And so they keep talking about their intentions. You don't know what, are you really that naive, Jimmy? People say this to me on Twitter. Do you really don't think that Elon Musk's intention is, I go, in politics, it doesn't matter what someone's intention is. It only matters their fruits, right? It only matters the results. That's why they call them that's why they call lawmaking making the sausage. You don't want to see how it's made. All you want to do is see the result. So I don't care. It's what I say jokingly is like I don't care if Lincoln freed the slaves because he thought it would help him get laid. It doesn't matter what his intention is, right? What matters is the result. So if they're doing some people have said that what they're doing now is they're trying to dismantle USAID, but then they're not against the intention of USAID. They still want to have soft power and control the world. They just want a full pulled that into the State Department. And I'm like, well, if they do that, we'll take a look at it, But right now,
Yeah.
I think the first step is exposing all the stuff that's happening. And so it doesn't mean I'm a simp for Elon Musk or, I have lots of criticisms. In fact, when the H-1B visa program, I was merciless in my criticism of him and Trump and Vivek over that. And, and Trump's Gaza policy, it's basically ethnic cleansing, the definition of it. So I'm taking everything on a case-by-case basis. And I'm not going to have Trump derangement syndrome. I'm not going to allow, Donald Trump to steal my critical thinking skills or people's hatred of him to steal my critical thinking skills. And I think it's a big mistake to do that. That's called Trump derangement syndrome. A lot of people had a big problem with me. They wanted to call me a right-winger when I was debunking Russiagate, right? And now we all know that that was a silly conspiracy theory, easily debunked, and it was invented by the FBI, the Clinton campaign, and along with the media and the CIA. And the reason I debunked that wasn't because I was a Donald Trump fan. I did that because if they can do that to Donald Trump, they'll do that to anyone. If the deep state can go to the FISA court and lie 17 times to get a warrant to get a phone tap on Donald Trump's campaign, which is exactly what they did. The Inspector General found that they lied 17 times to the FISA court, which is supposed to be there to fight terrorism, and they'll do that to you. I tried to explain that to Cornel West when I had on his show. I said, if you see the lawfare they're doing against Donald Trump, 92 felony indictments when George Bush and Dick Cheney walked the earth free men. This isn't about the rule of law. This is about prosecuting your political opponents because you can't beat them at the ballot box. And if they can do it to Donald Trump, they'll do it to you. They'll do it to Bernie Sanders. They'll do it to anybody who actually stands up and that with the establishment feels threatened by. And so that's what we have to keep in mind. So that's where I'm at. And I think, I know Bobby Kennedy a little bit. Nobody's had the courage that he's had in the last 15 years to say what he's said about Big Pharma. No one is. I mean, he's obviously not doing this for money, right? He didn't come up with wanting to have vaccines be safety tested like every other medicine because he wants to do it for money. He's doing that. He ruined his reputation, his wife's reputation. I mean, his career, the whole thing. And people are like, oh, this isn't some kind of money grab that RFK's doing. He's 70 years old and he's a Kennedy. He doesn't need to do that. And he's a successful lawyer. And so, in 2008, I found a Politico article where Barack Obama was looking to appoint RFK as the head of the EPA. I don't know if I didn't know that until just recently. And so it was just very, because he was a hero to the environmentalists, right? The environmental movement. And, I love what he said, when I tried to get mercury out of fish, they didn't call me anti-fish, but when I tried to get mercury out of vaccines, they called me anti-vaccine. So that's the perfect way to put it. And so I think of course, the bureaucracy. I already saw an undercover video from that OMG video at James O'Keefe, where they had someone who's a bureaucrat in the FDA saying that we can muck up the wheels for RFK and we can stop it. Anything he wants to do, we can stop. So I think there's still a big fight ahead, even though he's been confirmed now. That's great. Best HHS, I think, nominee in my lifetime. So I'm all for it. And plus, imagine if he was the secretary during COVID. Just think about that, how much saner our policy would have been, how much less damage. 41% of Black-owned businesses shuttered permanently during COVID because of the lockdowns. I mean, people don't talk about that stuff. Plus, the learning disabilities that were caused by masking children and masking the adults who were talking to them. So there's just a million bad things, and I don't think we would have ever been talking about mandates if he was there. And I don't even know if we would have declared it a national emergency. Right. So because it turns out
you would have had Jay Bhattacharya at the head of the NIH, and we know he would have been focused in terms of his protective input and what he would be trying to do, because he put it in writing and he was vilified for it. And he was right.
The Great Barrington Declaration, which is what we should have done, which is what used to be the consensus for how you handle pandemics. Right. And then all of a sudden we flipped the script when it came to COVID. 100%. Fauci was Fauci was telling the truth about masks, and then as soon as COVID hit, he lied, and then he said he lied when he was telling the truth, and then when he was telling the truth, when he was lying, he said he was telling. So it's just amazing what happened. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about RFK being the HHS. I'm excited about Tulsi. They all have flaws. They all, great men have great flaws, and don't forget that. I mean, LBJ gave us the Great Society, gave us Medicare, but of course he had a lot of flaws himself, right? So did JFK. So did JFK. So did
Oh my God! People don't appreciate how bad JFK was. A opiate drug addict. His Addison's disease was not Addison's. It's something that happens to people on high doses of opiates. Their adrenals shut down, their testosterone shuts down. They look like Addison's, and this effing doctor was just loading him up on opiates. Then when he was complaining of fatigue, he started injecting amphetamines until he got psychotic. There's a whole story of him throwing his clothes off and doing cartwheels down this hall of a hotel. People don't know this. I mean, that's what happened to JFK.
Wow, I didn't know that story either. I didn't know that about the opiate.
They did a drunk history on it. They did a drunk history about it. And the reality is, and it's all documented, and the reality is a very fine psychiatrist, she came forward and said, you can't be around that physician anymore. That guy's an asshole. Let me straighten this out. And she did. She got him landed. But it was, I mean, imagine if the Cuban Missile Crisis had happened when he was psychotic and doing cartwheels.
Oh, I always thought it was Addison's disease. I learn something new every time I talk to you.
No, not Addison's. But I back to the hoax of the Russia Gate.
Can I just say something really quickly too? About great men have great flaws. Tulsi has flaws. Kash Patel has flaws. RFK Jr. has flaws. Pam Bondi has flaws. What's interesting to me, the parts of the Senate testimony and the hearings that I watched, right, with RFK and Tulsi, was they didn't oppose them for their flaws. They opposed them for the things that they were good about, right? They were upset. Elizabeth Warren's upset that he's suing Big Pharma and winning. Right? They were upset that Tulsi had the guts to debunk the CIA when they were pushing obvious pro-war narratives and lies. And so the good things about them is what the senators, the bad things about them, they all agree on.
Well, so what is that? I'm so confused by this. So we're all learning all this about our government, right? We didn't know all this craziness, all this money was, as they said, as in one of those, again, those OMG videos, they said they were throwing gold bars off the Titanic, which we now see they were. And what do the elected officials know? What did they not know? And why in the world would they defend it now that it's being uncovered?
The defense, I think, my only explanation is that the Democratic Party is so, rotten that they're just caught flat-footed and they're reading from an old playbook, right? So they're out there defending bureaucracy. They're out there defending corruption, legit corruption. As it gets uncovered, they're like, stop uncovering it. It's the most.
That's what they're saying.
It's the most losing message I could ever have imagined. Like if you wanted to dismantle the Democratic Party, this is how you would do it. You would have someone uncover corruption, and then you'd have the Democrats go out there and defend it. And that's exactly what they're doing. So, the Democratic Party should have been replaced by an actual workers' party long ago. I hope that happens. I'm not a political genius in that way. That the workers need a Steve Bannon to come along and start a political party for them, because he's certainly done a bang-up job on the Republican Party, and he certainly got Donald Trump's administration ready. They hit the ground running, and when he lost the 2020 election, some people don't think he lost, but when he didn't get reelected, that was actually, I think, the best thing that happened for Donald Trump, because his first term, I don't think he expected to win, and he didn't really have a plan when he went into office. He's appointing Omarosa and things like that, and Scaramucci, and he didn't really know what was happening. He didn't understand the neocons and the not, and so now it seems like he's got himself a good team around him. The Tulsi's, the RFKs, the Bannon's back. And so I think that was the best thing for him. And so now he has a real agenda, and he knows how to overwhelm the opposition to implement it. And I think Again, I'm going to hold out my judgment on Donald Trump. I often say, let's remember Donald Trump is a billionaire, and how do you become a billionaire? By helping people. So, of course, that's not. And so I'm going to be skeptical, but at the same time, I'm going to wait for evidence. We'll know them by their fruits, and so let's wait and see. Right now, I'm really enjoying uncovering all the corruption and waste inside of the USAID. I'm really enjoying it. And now, when it comes to the Department of Education, in theory, I don't have a problem with, the Department of Education was, I think, invented in the 70s. I don't on theory have a problem with pushing it back to the states and having the states run the education. In fact, I think, I really opposed when Barack Obama was president, him and I forget his Secretary of Education. You know how many days his Secretary of Education spent in the classroom? Zero. And that's when they did that.
Did you ever hear him describe what his job was? Because I saw him on a talk show, and they said, "What is?" It was Chelsea Handler. She was sort of doing it as a goof. She was like, "I have no education," so I thought I'm gonna get the Secretary of Education in here and find out what education's all about. And she goes to him. He sits down, nice, smart young man, and she goes, "What do you do as the Secretary of Education?" He goes, "What do I do? What's my job? My job is to make sure that every student in this country has their civil liberties protected." That's your job? When he said that, I was like, oh my God. And if you look at the mandates of the Department of Education, it shows up like number 3 or 4. And they put it up as number 1. And that's all he did, was make sure civil liberties are protected. That's the Department of Education. That's billions of our dollars. When I heard that, I thought, man, we got problems. And that was probably 8 years ago. I saw that 8 years ago. It must have been 8 years ago. Yeah.
Well, if you remember, their big idea in the Barack Obama administration and his Secretary of Education's big idea was they had this program called Race to the Top. Now, so what they did was it was all about testing. And my wife was a teacher for 20 years. And so she quickly discovered that more tests means somebody gets more money. So when you're testing, somebody's got to administer those tests. They got to write the test, administer them. They got to score them. They got to do the analysis of them. So that's money. That's another like USAID program, right? So the second thing is Race to the Top was they would test students, which takes away time out of the classroom. My wife always told me I'd rather spend that time teaching than testing kids for no reason. So and kids hate testing anyway. So and they don't test what you think they're testing. So there's all these problems. The biggest problem is Race to the Top was that they would test students, and the schools that did the best on the tests got more money. And the schools that did the worst got less money. Well, it's the opposite. So they were running this Department of Education like you would run a corporation. They were applying corporation ethics and ideals to education, which is a nonprofit, which that didn't work. It didn't work, right? Schools got worse. So it's the opposite. It's counterintuitive. You would think that the kids who are scoring worse on tests would be the ones who needed more money. And another bad thing about it, what it did was it incentivized then schools and teachers to cheat on the tests, to inflate their scores so that they would get,
or else they would focus on the test taking rather than the education, right? You just, what's on the test? Let's make sure they perform well on the test. Don't worry about the education. Just get that test under their wing.
And then the Department
by the way, I have to comment about my JFK thing because the people are going crazy on the chat rooms. Go watch the drunk history about JFK. Well, I've done drunk history several times. They give you historical documents that you review. They are very careful that you should be drawing from well-documented historical documents. And I've seen the JFK stuff. The reality is the doctor that was shooting him up with opiates after he was dismissed from the White House came out here and started shooting up the likes of Marilyn Monroe and multiple other people who died of drug addiction that he killed. So this guy, they called him Dr. Feelgood out here, but people are going, but Bob Kennedy JFK had back pain. Back pain is a symptom of opiate addiction. When people get on opiates, the withdrawal causes severe back pain and severe headache. It's part of the opiate addiction syndrome. And that's what has them and now pursuing the opiates. And they take enough, their adrenals shut down, their testes shut down. People end up giving them hormones because of the opiates. It's a whole freaking mess. But in this case with JFK, he ended up getting amphetamines by shot, parenteral amphetamines, and he developed an amphetamine psychosis. Good times. So that's that. Sorry, Jimmy. Let's go back to our conversation. You went to the RussiaGate thing. Of course, the Pulitzer Prize was given out for RussiaGate, and now there is a lawsuit underway, which is hysterical. Which I think is hysterical, and hopefully that begins the process of holding people accountable for libel. There's libel and horrible things said about people in the press all the time. They need to have their hand held to the fire. This is a great way to go after it seems to me.
Well, that just goes to show you, awards are often nefarious, right? So that's just the establishment pushing a narrative. And the biggest narrative disseminator is the New York Times. The New York Times writes these articles that bolster the establishment narrative. The establishment gives them an award for it. That's all that is. So that's 100% propaganda. I was onto that RussiaGate was a phony story from the beginning. And a lot of my, I consider myself a classic leftist, right? I'm not a woke guy, but I'm, for workers' rights. I'm for freedom of
classical liberal.
Classical, yes. I'm not the whatever the Democrats are. And so people were like, now you're going to be right winger. Now you're defending Trump. I'm like, no, I'm defending the truth. Right. And that's the important thing, because if they can do it to Trump, they'll do it. They would have done the same. By the way, they did RussiaGate Bernie Sanders. I don't know if people forget this, but I think he won the Nevada, and immediately they started launching stories that President Putin supports. And so they RussiaGated him, and that they said that they were supporting him with social media posts and things like that. That's the exact same playbook they were doing against Bernie Sanders. So anybody who challenged the establishment, that was going to be the play. So yeah, RussiaGate was easily debunkable because I was able to do it. I'm a nightclub comedian, C student, and if I could see through it, I know all those other people had to see through it. Unless they, like Rachel Maddow, I think she truly is clinically diagnosable as Trump deranged. I mean, it's just crazy. But she's also in the pocket of the military-industrial complex. She never met a war she didn't like, including the Ukraine war, which was also a phony, just a proxy war. It was an economic war between the United States and Russia. And we thought that we could, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but I could talk about it a lot. And now it's ending. So Trump has gotten on the phone with Russia, and he got on the phone with Zelensky, and he's like, we're going to have a peace deal, and this is over. And by the way, there was a peace deal a month after the war started. It was all agreed to. Zelensky agreed to it. And then they had Boris Johnson fly to Ukraine and say, you better not sign that or implement this peace agreement, or the Nazis in Ukraine are going to have you hanging from a tree in downtown. And that's a fact. That's what was told to him. And so that's why I get why he didn't do it. And so he became he's the thing that they claim Putin is. He doesn't have elections. He's outlawed the adversarial press. He's outlawed the adversarial political parties, which doesn't matter because they won't have an election anyway. So every bad thing that they say about Putin, you can apply to Zelensky. And this war, people they don't know where the war started. So it started a decade ago or more. Yeah. But if you go to 2014, the Maidan coup, so there was Yanukovych was the president of Ukraine, democratically elected, and he wanted to remain more neutral between Russia and the European Union and the West. And we couldn't have that, so we overthrew him. We got a lot of that USAID money. Samantha Power went and distributed that money to those right-wingers, all better known as Nazis. And why do I call them that? Because they were swastikas. That's why. And they did the Maidan coup, right? So that was also propaganda with the Maidan coup. It wasn't a popular uprising. And then they installed so that's what they got rid of that. They installed a puppet. Zelensky then got threatened. That's how and they started shelling the people in the Donbass. It's a long story, but there was peace agreement after peace agreement, and guess who broke those peace agreements? It wasn't Russia. It was Ukraine and NATO under the influence of NATO. So now that war is going to end, and that should have never started, because that started because of the threat of putting Ukraine into NATO, which everybody from Henry Kissinger to Noam Chomsky to Mearsheimer and everybody in between warned against doing that, right? That you don't want to poke a tiger, and what that would do is push Russia closer together with China, and that's exactly what's happened. That's another thing everybody's warned against for decades, and that's so the neocons inside Joe Biden's administration did the worst policy ever possible with Ukraine. It made Russia stronger. They're stronger now than they were before the war. It made us weaker. When they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, what that did was made energy to Europe way more expensive. So it's killing the economy of Germany, which is the economic engine of Europe, and it's just been bad for everybody except for Putin, Russia, and China, coincidentally. So Ken, they screwed up, just like the Iraq War, just like Libya, just like 20 years of Afghanistan. They're doing everything wrong because of their neocon mindset.
Yeah, it all seems to have had not the intended effect. That's for sure. I want to go over to the Department of Justice. So Trump has now pardoned Mayor Adams. The prosecutor, the judge, I guess, or the prosecutor from the Justice Department quit her job as a result. And I heard a rumor, I don't know if this is substantiated or not, that Trump was firing all the Department of Justice officials that Biden had appointed, particularly on his way out. Are you hearing that?
So this is news to me that he pardoned Adams, but and this Justice Department thing. But it seems in line with what he's doing right now. And I often wondered. I looked into a little bit about that Adams case, his prosecution. I don't know if you have. It seems very thin to me. Like the stuff. Like I'm not saying he didn't do what they're accusing him of, but what he did seems like nothing. Like he took a flight to Turkey.
He tried to help the economy of his city by helping a major country who brought money to his city. As a result, they flew him out to talk to some of these people, and they sort of upgraded him along the way. He didn't accept money. He just got some upgrades which often happens to elected officials. That was it. That was what happened. He got upgraded on Air Turkey or something when he went out to support the economic interest of his government and his city. We need more of that, not less.
And so it's that was so. I'm with you on that. That's why I was very suspicious. I'm like, this is what they're going after him on. I wonder what they're really angry at. It smacked of lawfare against Donald Trump, and of course, it's happening in New York City. It's happening in Manhattan. Of course, it is. That's so. I think. I wonder what so my theory was he started to talk out against being a sanctuary city, and he started to talk out about how the burdens of the migrants in New York, and that's what it was, and they were doing that to set an example.
And probably knows a thing or two about Alvin Bragg and Letitia, what's her name? He probably has some info
Letitia
about
James.
These guys, because now Letitia James, they're now, now Pam Bondi is going after them. Did you see that? I couldn't tell whether it was a criminal action. It's the Department of Justice, so it should be criminal, but somebody said it was civil. I above my pay grade, but it's interesting. I don't like the idea that this government should engage in any kind of lawfare. On the other hand, it does look like these people may have really seriously broken the law.
Yeah, I just had Steve Bannon on my show, and they just had him plead guilty to embezzling not money for himself. I guess apparently he paid someone who ran a wall project, a veteran who doesn't have any arms or legs anyway. So it just like why they had to try all the January 6th people in D.C. because as Nancy Pelosi's daughter said on an undercover video that if they tried any of the January 6th people outside of D.C., they couldn't convict them. So they had to, that's same thing when in Manhattan, right? You have to get a very a jury that hates Donald Trump, that hates Steve Bannon, that hates. So same thing. So I'm all for Pam Bondi, Letitia James, and Alvin Bragg. Cuomo was on Bill Maher. a couple of months ago, and they were talking about the lawfare case against Donald Trump in Manhattan, brought by Alvin Bragg, and he said it's a ridiculous case, and if I was still governor, this would have never happened. And that's a partisan Democrat saying that, right? That's an ex-Democrat governor. And people are thinking about him running for president as a Democrat. So so you know that guy's corrupt. So Alvin Bragg is 100% corrupt. But Letitia James, I've caught her lying many times on my show. Big lies, like saying that she didn't, it's not a political prosecution of Donald Trump, and she didn't come into office with the idea of prosecuting him. I got videotape after videotape of her giving speeches where she bragged that when I get elected, I'm going to prosecute Donald Trump and put him in jail, lock him up. She did chants, lock him up. And the irony is that, they all said Donald Trump is going to use the legal system to prosecute his political opponents because he said lock her up with Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton certainly deserved a prosecution for how way she mishandled classified documents, for sure. But he didn't. That's the irony. He didn't prosecute. He didn't prosecute any of his political opponents. He could have. He didn't. And then what did they do? They did it to him. And it just goes to show you how corrupt our establishment news media is, that they couched it in, they never told you that way. They never couched it that way. Like, oh, well, the thing they said Donald Trump was going to do, they're actually doing to Donald Trump. But no, they did it. They all reported it as if it was legitimate lawfare, that it wasn't politically motivated. And of course, it obviously was. And the overwhelming majority of Americans saw through it. I mean, I don't think they saw this coming. I didn't think they thought Donald Trump was going to be able. I mean, it's one of the biggest political comebacks in the history.
I had to take a little break here and talk about the people that support us, but I want to get back. I want to talk about what I'm going to call EDS, Elon derangement syndrome, and I'm predicting there will be BDS too. There'll be Bobby derangement, and probably with Kelsey. Does she spread it with a K? Tulsi TDS. There'll be another TDS. There'll be Tulsi Gabbard syndrome as well, Tulsi derangement syndrome. All right, we're Jimmy Dore. Go. Can people subscribe in a Rumble for the Jimmy Dore Live, Jimmy Dore Show?
Go to jimmydore.com.
jimmydore.com. It's all there, including the live events, which you see over his shoulder there. All right, we'll take a little break, and I want to tell you about our friends at Fatty 15 that I'm very privileged to be able to present them to you. This product was discovered while they were doing research on dolphins. A brilliant veterinarian noticed that dolphins got illnesses just like humans did, Alzheimer's, that kind of thing. And they should develop this. It's the first pure, bioavailable, and patented C15, pentadecanoic acid, 36 cellular benefits, multiple longevity-enhancing pathways, strengthens cell membranes against oxidative breakdown, activates AMPK, inhibits mTOR, targets 6 hallmarks of aging. I always tell people Fatty 15 is the essential fatty acid. So Susan takes it, my kids take it. Some people report, I take it for longevity purposes, but some people report that they get really my son says he gets, sleep is better, he gets more energy from it. So it improves mitochondrial function as well, up to 45%, keeping our cells, of course, energized. And it is the ingredient that protects your cells. Fatty 15, doctor.com/fatty15 for 15% off your first order, 20% when you subscribe. There's a lot of great longevity products out there I'm going to be talking about in the future, but this is one. People always ask me, what do you take for longevity? This is one. This is one you should absolutely be taking. And it's sort of silly not to. The cellular fragility syndrome was discovered by this group, and it shows Fatty 15 can clearly improve it and reverse that particular syndrome. Other group is our friends at the Wellness Company, of course. I'm on the board there, medical board. They have a series of kits to prepare you. The idea was that during COVID, people were not able to get medical care. They were not able to see physicians. They were told to just go home, come back when they're blue. And the TWC came to a bunch of us and said, we'd like to change that. We'd like to help people become rationally ready. Now, one of the kits we have is the Contagion Emergency Kit from Wellness Country. You can save 10% by shopping at doctor.com/TWC. They have 7 other kits. Here's one of them here. This is the field kit. This is the big one. This is the big boy. Everything is in this thing. And we reach into it all the time. We didn't know that we would have to use it during a fire. So we have on one side the government failing us by preventing us to be able to get the care we need. On the other side, they failed us because we had a catastrophe here during some winds, which occur every year, and fire broke out. You couldn't find a pharmacy. You couldn't get out of your house. Thank God we had the wellness company kits. Experts from COVID era are freaking about the impending bird flu epidemic. Do not panic. Just prepare yourself. The Contagion kit has things like azithromycin and also Tamiflu, which is a generic Tamiflu, and budesonide, which is an inhaler, an anti-inflammatory inhaler, has been shown to be useful during COVID and probably during bird flu and many upper respiratory infections. Again, it is doctor.com/TWC for 10% off. We also are going to have a store with a multiplicity of products coming your way. You'll hear about that soon. In sexual health, reproductive health, there's a lot coming that we're going to be working with the TWC company to get you access to. And of course, there is telehealth backing up all of us. You have telehealth follow-up and telehealth before you're issued your kits. Okay. So lastly, of course, it is Valentine's coming up. Chocolate, collagen together. Yes, Paleo Valley's grass-fed bone broth, protein powder, chocolate and collagen. We reach for it all the time. We love the chocolate. It comes in other flavors as well. We add our coffee every day. It's made from bones, not hides, minimally processed, low in calories. Seriously, nutrient dense and low in calories. A hard thing to find. This has got it. And it's a good buttress against sarcopenia, right? As we age, we lose our muscle mass. Protein is very important. Go to doctor.com/Paleo Valley for 15% off your first order. And it is 20% when you subscribe. Yep. And gets also, while you're there, the beef sticks, chicken sticks. If you see the ad that when we get our card here, our video card together, you'll see that I'm interviewing the brains behind all this, Autumn Smith, and she is very particular about how she sources and develops those beef sticks. They're also high in nutrient, low in calorie. The chicken is only like 60 calories, and they're very filling. They also have these superfood bars, which if you look at the ingredients of the superfood bars, the base is back to the bone broth again. Very impressive food source, nutrient rich again. Susan likes the lemon meringue in particular. So it is doctor.com/Paleo Valley. There we go.
Also, you can find all the links at drju.com/sponsors, and you can get your coupon codes and all the great products that we have here on the show.
We are so lucky to have this.
Keeps the ship afloat.
We indeed, and we appreciate your support.
We're like Noah's Ark here. It's raining like cats and dogs.
Like crazy day in Los Angeles too. And that they've been up until this point. They're like, it's going to be mudslides. There's going to be mudslides. We had drizzle every time that this is a deluge right now. So there's going to be mudslides. So because that's what happens in Southern California. All right, Jimmy Dore Show on Rumble. Tell them the website again, Jimmy.
JimmyDore.com.
That's where you go. And can you move your head to your right, camera left, and I want them to be able. Okay, there we go. And Caleb, there it is. That's the upcoming. So what's coming is Dallas, Austin, Baltimore, Hartford. Look at those dates: February 20th, 21st, 23rd, March 14th in Baltimore, Hartford April 1st, Syracuse April 2nd, and Atlantic City. Oh, I haven't seen that on the schedule in a long time. April 3rd at, I can't tell, the Claridge Hotel. Is that it, Jimmy?
That is it. That's correct. Yes. And then
you're gonna be a busy boy.
Yes, I love doing stand-up comedy.
Did you get a call from Adam Ray's people? They need you to respond to some stuff there. They're coming at me. The Dr. Phil show also, Adam Ray's thing. So Elon derangement syndrome. I saw, what's her name? The congresswoman from South Central here. She was like, who knows what he's got on us? I mean, you go
Maxine
Waters. Yeah, Maxine Waters saying, who knows what he's got on us? He's invading our privacy. And I thought, yeah, who does know maybe he does have something on you guys. And maybe that's what we'd like to know. And he's just there. Look, I've always felt that bureaucracy was the enemy, and he is stating that out loud. That we're living a bureaucracy, not a democracy. And unless we had a guy named Paul Alexander come in here, and he was sort of brought inside of the State Department, and they said to him explicitly, like, don't worry about these elected officials. We run the government. We know what we're doing here. And when he told me that, this was about 3-4 years ago, he told me that, I thought, oh man, we are in big, big, big trouble. And little did I know, on top of that, the extraordinary corruption of the amount of money that's being used for nonsense, and all of them feeding at that trough, so it seems.
Yeah, I just saw a friend of mine who I've had on my show. She was a big fundraiser for the Democratic Party, and she got disillusioned when she went to I was at the convention in Chicago. She was at the convention, and it was obvious that it was a party of the rich, and it's not the party of the workers anymore. And in fact, more people who make under $100,000 voted for Donald Trump than voted for Kamala Harris. So that, in 2016, Chuck Schumer, who was the Senate leader at the time, they asked him about, hey, you're losing blue collar voters in Pennsylvania, and you're losing blue. And he said, yeah, it doesn't matter. He said, for every blue collar worker we lose, we're going to gain 2 or 3 white collar suburban voters. And you can repeat that in Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin. And of course, that wasn't true, right? So Hillary Clinton lost.
Right.
And so, but what he was stating was that their party is now no longer the party of blue collar workers. So now, how can you be a left wing party and be beholden to Wall Street? You can't represent Wall Street and represent workers, right? So that those two things are incongruent, and so that's why they're left doing all the woke and identity politics, right? So because that's all they have left to distinguish themselves, because they're just as big as war hawks, they're just as big as big pharma shills, they're just as big as Wall Street puppets, big oil, the whole thing. Barack Obama bragged about that the oil industry extracted more oil from the ground during his presidency than any other presidency in history. So I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that they're no different.
It is.
And that's why it's been nonstop 24/7 identity politics. And identity politics doesn't come from the ground up. Identity politics comes from the top down. And it's been a ploy of the deep state, like USAID, of the CIA, as Christian Parenti revealed and taught us on our show since World War II. And they've hooked up, they've combined the deep state with the NGOs like the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and they push identity politics. They push feminism. Even Gloria Steinem now admits that she's, was a CIA asset, and they pushed feminism.
Really?
Why? Because all that stuff. So they didn't kill Martin Luther King when he was trying to get black people access to lunch counters, because that didn't hurt anybody economically. But when he did a poor people's march, he wasn't doing a black people's march. He wasn't doing a poor black people's march. He was doing a poor people's march. Same thing with Malcolm X, when he realized that it wasn't black white. It was class. It was class consciousness. It was us against them. And the same thing. Who was the Black Panther guy? I'm blanking on his name. Fred Hampton, and he knew it was. He joined with the what they called the Proud Boy. No, what was it? It was called, I forget what it. But traditionally, they would have Confederate flags in Chicago. He knew that he had to win them over, and he did. And they realized that they shared a common interest, just like Christian Smalls, who started the first union on Amazon in Staten Island, who was a black guy who organized a bunch of Trump voters. And the way you do that is you don't go in there and say, "Hey, who's here doesn't agree with my LGBTQ stance? Okay, you're out. Who here is against the gun regulation? Okay, you're out." That's not how it does. You go in and you say, we have a shared common interest. Let's organize. It's not left, right. It's us against the man. It's top down. It's class consciousness. And that's what the deep state and the NGOs have been. That's why they push identity politics. It's,
And I'm sure you heard Mike Benn's explanation is that they push it in other countries to destabilize those countries.
That's
what they were attempting to do here during the first Trump administration.
That's why it got ramped up, especially after Occupy Wall Street. So you had the Tea Party, which was upset about the bank bailouts, and then you had Occupy Wall Street that was upset about the bank bailouts. And the deep state was like, hey, we got to stop this. They're coming together through across economic lines and have an economic populism. And so that's when Schellenberger talks about this, that the mentions of white supremacy and racism exploded in the national media. The Washington Post, the New York Times, the Boston Globe, all those places just exploded, even though we had just gotten done electing the black president twice, overwhelmingly. Right. So they wanted to push that. So so now everybody, that's what identity. I have a joke about, if it was 1860, the Democrats wouldn't be fixing slavery. They'd be bragging about their first transgendered slave owner. I mean, so that they don't fix the problem. They put somebody in charge of the problem because of identity politics. And now if you talk about the problem anymore, they're going to call you a phobe of some kind. And so that's been the game. But I think people are waking up to it. I think enough people woke up to it, certainly with the biological males and female spaces. Right now, I'm all for gay rights. Everything. I think they should be first-class citizens, which they are. When I grew up, they weren't. They were second-class citizens. They couldn't get married. They could get fired for being gay. They could get kicked out of their housing. All that's over, right? And so now Donald Trump, ironically, was the first president to enter the White House who supported gay marriage. The first president was, because Barack Obama, when he entered, he was for civil unions. And Donald Trump, when he entered, he was for gay marriage. That's the irony. Anyway, so that's what identity politics is. It's there to make sure that we don't come together along class lines to oppose the oligarchy. And so the oligarchs push identity politics. It comes from that's ESG and DEI. That comes from BlackRock. That comes from Vanguard. That comes from State Street, and they force it on people, and they make it hard for companies to get loans. I have a video of Larry Fink saying we're going to charge you more for your loans if you don't take them. We have to force this on companies. We have to force it on them, and they exactly did that. And as soon as it became okay not to do it, corporate America is fleeing DEI policies, from Amtrak to Facebook and Google. They're all getting rid of their DEI policies because it's just it's there to divide people.
But not Mark Cuban. He still insists that's the only way to go. So what about the? You go ahead.
He's such a virtue signaling nutcase. I mean, I always I thought Mark Cuban was a real sharp guy. He got a winning basketball team. He had all these winning. I watch him on Shark Tank. He seems like he's really sharp. He focuses in on what's important, but then he just lost. Yeah. He got it is a woke mind virus, and he got it.
He got it. he's infected. That's it. He got it. Let's talk about the press a little bit, because there's some interesting stories that came out today. I guess Reuters was getting a bunch of money from USAID. Susan, I think you sent me a text, or somebody sent me a text on that. And New York Times, I think, is getting money.
You can tell that.
But they clearly are not operating Politico, but they're not businesses. They're sort of NGOs or something. But the point is that's all going to get pulled away. Are they going to survive as a business? I interviewed the head of the owner of the LA Times a couple of days ago. It was a very interesting interview. He's had it. He's going to change everything at the LA Times. But are these other outlets that have been dependent, or I don't know how dependent, but I imagine dependent on government funds, going to have real trouble as a business?
Well, I hope they do. And I know Politico, for the first time in their history, didn't make payroll. And they put out, I don't know that was a couple days ago, I reported on that they sent out an email, it's just a glitch in our software or something. It's amazing how that happened right when they stopped the payments from USAID. So I hope so. I hope they all go out of business. The corporate media is nothing but propaganda, and they're a cancer on. And that's Mike Benz also revealed that the way they go after you know, I don't know if you were around then on YouTube, but in 2017 they did a thing called Adpocalypse. And Adpocalypse was the New York Times ran some hit pieces about how everybody on YouTube is radical and they're white supremacists and they're racists and they're Nazis and they're pedophiles, and they're putting advertising on those videos, and so all the advertisers stopped their advertising. And that was because YouTube, people are sick and tired of corporate media. They're tired of the propaganda, and people were turning to independent news media on YouTube, and we were a big competitor. And so now people are waking up to that's the game. That's the game that they not only, you know, USAID funded a thing, all these media outlets in Ukraine that was just straight propaganda, that whatever the State Department wanted them to say, they said. And one of them was called Vox Media Ukraine. And Vox Media Ukraine did a video on me, Jimmy Dore, and talked about how I'm a conspiracy theorist and I'm a liar. And that was and they did it with other people too. And the point of that was the same thing they did to Russell Brand. The point was to get them demonetized. And so that's how you go after them. You scare their advertisers. They did it to Twitter with Elon Musk. They went after his advertisers because he was, by the way, Elon Musk is no free speech absolutist. He's for a little bit more free speech, and they couldn't even tolerate that. He was going to let you tell the truth about COVID. He was going to let you tell the truth about vaccines and all the mandates and all that stuff. And they couldn't handle that. So they had to demonize him. He went from being a golden boy because he was the environmentalist dream. He was making electric cars popular. And then they all of a sudden, they hated him overnight, just like that. The same thing they did with Bobby Kennedy. He went from being an environmentalist, a hero to their movement, to, you know, and then to boom, just overnight, they got everybody to hate him and think he was crazy and nuts. And so they're doing the same thing, so and that's what Elon derangement syndrome. And now again, Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world. I'm skeptical of his motives, but like I said before, it doesn't matter what his motives are. We'll know him by his fruit, and we'll see what he produces. And when he does something like come out and about the H-1B visas, and I think he misrepresented it 100%. Each H-1B visas isn't about bringing in the brightest. We already have another program for that. That was just, and so I criticized him mercilessly over that, and him and Vivek, who I like certain things about both of those guys. But when he does something, I'll criticize him, and when he does something good, like expose corruption, I'll also report that. I'm not going to have an Elon derangement. So I'm not going to let people's hatred for Elon Musk or my skepticism for the billionaire class rob me of my critical thinking skills. Do I think billionaires can do some things good sometimes? Yes. Am I generally skeptical of them? Yes.
Did you read his biography? Musk?
I did not. No.
It's worth a read. You'll feel like you know him much. You understand him much better if you read, particularly the first 100 pages or so, a couple hundred pages really. But he is different than you imagine. He's kind of different, and he is, the one thing I learned is he is absolutely, there's a relentlessness about him I've really never seen in another human being. It's an abject relentlessness. He doesn't stop until he gets where he needs to go. He's not always clear where he's going, but he knows his compass is headed in the right direction. You know, and the story is about him sleeping on under his desk or sleeping on the floor of the factory. Yeah, all the time. That's what he does. He just stays on stuff until, and by the way, I'm sure he's sacrificing a lot by helping us out with our government. I really do. The guy was an essential feature at SpaceX and Tesla, and he's not there. He's busy helping us untangle our government. And that's sort of one of his great assets, right? Is he can take, like what he did at Twitter. He just took it apart, put it back together with 20% of the employees, and it was much better. RFK Jr. is very similar. He knows how to pull things apart and look at them and look at the adulterating influences and take action. And the reality is, on the HHS side, my prediction is he's going to be taking, this is something that Musk doesn't do, he'll be at least threatening and probably taking legal action. And he's told me that he's going to go after a RICO suit on particularly the medical publications.
Oh, I hope so, because they're taking big pharma money. I found that out that the BMJ they put a guy in charge of their hey, where did we go wrong and where did we get right during COVID? And I looked into that guy who they put in charge of this study, and he was the one calling people anti-vaxxers. He was the one shaming, calling people anti-science if you question the masks or lockdowns. And I'm like, this is the guy you're putting in charge of this study at the BMJ. And then the editor of the BMJ then tweeted that Jimmy Dore's a conspiracy theorist, and I was like, oh wow, I'm really onto something here. That they have to go. They go immediately to the conspiracy theorist thing. And I'm like, well, it's not a conspiracy that you take revenue from Big Pharma. It's not a conspiracy that he called people who were right about COVID anti-science, and he has never apologized for it. Those are conspiracy facts. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst.
Speaking of that, everybody should follow Vinay Prasad. We've had him on the show a couple of times, but he has been on fire lately, taking aim at these very issues. I got to know him before COVID when he was doing, careful medical academic analysis of medical literature on oncology. And he kept sort of pointing out how some of the conclusions really couldn't be drawn, and they weren't properly powered, and certain things were becoming routine medical care that really didn't do anything, or they're expensive. And he just was always taking. Now he's like, oh boy. So Vinay Prasad, Prasad, you please follow him on Twitter. His stuff is second to none. He's a brilliant physician.
Well, I featured his work on my show, and much like Elon Musk, when he's right, I will boost him, and when he's wrong, I will also report that. And he was. I thought he does some really good work, like you say. I had him on I had Jay Bhattacharya on to debunk the stuff that he was saying about certain things about COVID, about the lockdowns and how long it's going to take. And of course, he's still anti. I'm pretty sure he's anti-ivermectin, and he did a hit job on RFK. And so I did a big video taking down Vinny, and I thought it was very underhanded what he did to RFK. And I told him, hey, I'm sure RFK would come on your show. If you have questions, why wouldn't you bring him on your show? And he never, of course, he doesn't respond, and he never will have RFK Jr. Maybe he will now, that he's the HHS head, but I don't know if RFK would want to boost him now, because he did do a hit job on RFK.
And he was opposed to some of the stuff Jay Bhattacharya. I mean, ivermectin is sort of. You can read the literature how you want to read it, but by the way, it's impossible to get anything published about ivermectin anyway. So it's hard to know if you're seeing the landscape fully. But did he disagree with Bhattacharya on anything else?
Yeah, you know what? I can't remember the specifics, but I remember that Jay Bhattacharya and him are friendly, and he was like, "Boy, this is awkward for me because I've liked Vinny," and he said, "But no, he's 100% wrong about that." And I can't remember the exact thing we were talking about, but he definitely pushed back on Vinny over it, and was like, "No, he's wrong about that." So again, when he's wrong about something,
that's the way medicine. That's the way medicine always is. It's the way it's supposed to work. Exactly. You go, I disagree. I agree. Here's my evidence. You guys decide. And we'll go back and forth until a consensus is achieved. And which, speaking of the consensus, do you think there will be any legal action for the perpetrators of so much of the COVID catastrophe? I mean, we heard, I don't know if you heard, Tulsi was on I saw her on an Instagram or something. She was saying that she wants to shut down the biolabs in the Ukraine that are in active war zones, which is insane. But I'm wondering if she's going to get at some of this stuff and whether there will be some more to be revealed, certainly.
I hope so. I know that, people have made, the pardon that they gave to Dr. Fauci extends back to 2014, which is when we overthrew the government in Ukraine and biolabs started happening. Isn't that interesting? But it doesn't cover if the states want to prosecute him. I'm not a legal scholar, but what I understand is that doesn't the federal pardons. But nothing gives you faith in science more than a pardon. Am I right? Are you kidding me?
Right.
Anyway, so
for anything before, anything, I forget the term they used, but it was anything you could imagine.
Yeah, for 11 years. And so we know that RFK, if you read his book, all the horrible things about Dr. Fauci, and he was the head of the bioweapons program. And that the more stuff that comes out, the more it looks like that's what that was. But anyway, I hope so. I hope we could at least have, a day in court. That would be nice. When I remember when Fauci had to give deposition, he said, I don't remember, I think 184 times. It was some crazy high number like that. I don't recall. I don't remember. And so, we of course we have the emails now that shows that he bribed those scientists who said that the virus came from the Wuhan lab. And then all of a sudden they flipped. It was the proximal origins paper, right? And so we know what happened. The emails came out, and it's almost hilarious. Matt Orfala did a hilarious video about them using their own words. We've seen them lie about, natural immunity, herd immunity, early treatments. We've seen him lie about the efficacy of the vaccine time and time again. There isn't a thing that he didn't lie about when it came to COVID. And then when they confronted him about, hey, where did you get this 6-foot social distance? He said, oh, it just appeared. He goes, I didn't make it up. It just appeared.
It was suddenly there. Yeah, it was Francis Collins that made it up. It was those guys, but and Redfield too was part of that. But I in a weird way, I also had videos going after me to take me down. I wonder if they came out of the Ukraine, Susan. It's kind of an interesting thought, but it could be. But what's interesting to me is, as painful as COVID was, and as much damage the government did in response to it. I don't know. I choke on these words, but I'm grateful for it, because it's what really pulled the curtain back and started this whole ball rolling that we're into now, where we're like, where did that come from? What's going on here? Why do these people feel they can do this? What happened to my free speech, my freedom of movement? They seem to love this. Something's wrong. It sort of alerted us that there's something being terribly, terribly wrong with our government. And now here we are. I mean, it took a while to unravel all this, but it's unraveling rather quickly, as in much in the way that Hemingway described in one of his characters. I think it was For Whom the Bell Tolls. One of the characters went bankrupt in a dialogue. Somebody's asking him, how did this happen? He goes, well, first it was slow, then it was fast. And I feel like we're in the fast phase right now of the unraveling.
Well, I'm still live in Hollywood. I mean, I'm in Studio City, but I travel in those circles, and they're very slow. It's like they want a memory hole everything that happened about COVID. They don't want to, it's over. Are you still talking about vaccines? You're still talking about mandates. You're still talking about lockdowns and yeah, I'm still talking about that because it was the most horrific thing that ever happened in my lifetime. And if we don't talk about it, it's bound to happen again. Right now, they're killing millions and millions of chickens. Isn't it funny how the bird flu only affects cows and chickens? They're not killing ducks. They're not killing geese. They're not out there killing the blue jays or cardinals or robins. They're just killing chickens and cow. Isn't that weird? So to a lot of people, that's very suspicious. It's suspicious to me. Because it's a lot of people say they want to take over the food, and Bill Gates is heavily invested in fake meat and fake food, and he's the number one private farm landowner in America. What's that all about? And so I just love when I love exposing Bill Gates, because people think because he wears a crew neck sweater and glasses and he's a nerd that makes him a good person. No, when the devil comes, he's not going to have a pitchfork and horns. He's going to have a pair of glasses and a crew neck sweater. And like I always talk about these guys who scream the loudest about climate change, and I say, well, the people who scream the loudest about it don't seem, their actions, again, you'll know them by their fruit, their actions are incongruent with what they say, because they're flying, they want to ban gas-powered leaf blowers, but they're flying over to a conference to ban gas-powered leaf blower in their own private jet. And one flight from a private jet has more carbon emissions than my car in my lifetime. And he said, someone asked him, why did you fly in a private jet to Kenya? And he says, well, I buy carbon offsets. Oh, really? Okay. That's like Jeffrey Epstein buying molestation offsets. Either it's bad or it's not. And he said, I had to, I had to go to Kenya. He said, I had to go there so I could learn about Kenya, so I could help the farmers there. He's now the guy who doesn't have a college degree. Somehow he went from computers to vaccines. Now he's a farmland guy. And I was like, boy, if there was just another way if that Bill Gates could learn about Kenya, maybe if we all pitched in, we could buy him a computer. And then he could learn about Kenya that way. But anyway, so yeah, I'm very suspicious of I'm not falling for the bird flu thing. I had someone on, they wanted to kill, a lady has an ostrich farm, and some of those ostriches are 35 years old. She has real relationships with them. She had like 400 they wanted to kill all of them because they found 2 ostriches with bird flu. And she's like, yeah, but the older ones have an immunity to it. They're stronger, they're older. It's the young ones you have to watch. And they're doing the same thing they did with COVID. One policy fits all. There's no, maybe you should give a vaccine to an elderly person or someone with 3 comorbidities, but certainly a baby doesn't need one, or a child, or a healthy young adult. Anyone under 60 years old doesn't need. And so anyway, so they're doing the same thing, and it's not being run for your health. It's being run for control in some way, and So thank God for Donald Trump pulled us out of the WHO. Because I'm sure you are aware of that they were trying to turn over sovereignty to the WHO, and they were going to be able to supersede our own legislation. And people don't realize that the number one donor to the WHO isn't the United States, it isn't China. It's Bill Gates, and he does it through 2 different organizations. Gavi, if you combine Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and if you combine it with Gavi, which is a nonprofit vaccine NGO that he invented himself, if you put those 2 together, they're the biggest donors to the WHO. And the past WHO chairperson admitted that they have to go around and ask for funding from people, and then when the people give them money, they have to do what the people say. That's that's a video I've shown on my show, and so that's exactly what's happening. And that's another, WEF, WHO, deep state. They all have and it's all run by a handful of billionaires, and one of them is Bill Gates. And I don't want Bill Gates anywhere near my food. I don't want Bill Gates. There's another video. I'm sure maybe you've seen it. There's Bill Gates. He was asked about. Bill, you've been investing a lot of money in vaccines lately. And he said, it's my greatest investment. I get the biggest return on my investment with vaccines than anything. He said it's 20 to 1. He said we invested $10 billion, and now and here we are a few years later, we have $200 billion. And I'm like, boy, that is quite I could see. And of course, you all know he invested all that money personally in the Pfizer right before COVID. And then as soon as he bought, I think, $50 million worth of stock. And then as soon as he cashed out, he made like $500 million. And as soon as he cashed out his stock, he started shitting on the vaccine. He started saying that, it's not infection blocking, it's not long lasting, and the virus wasn't as deadly as we thought it was. I have a video of him saying all those things. He goes, it had a low fatality rate. We didn't know it at the time. Oh, really? Anyway.
How do we know it?
Yeah, how did we know it? So, but as soon as he cashed it out, and then he was talking about they have this new thing. They're nasal inhalers. They're better because they're infection block. And then I look into it, and of course he's invested in the company that's making that. So you can't. Bill Gates is a megalomaniac, monopolist, and dare I say he's a psychopath.
Is he like a vaccine intranasally or an intranasal wash? Because we TWC vaccine. We're selling intranasal. Okay, the wash will do about as much free as anything. Yeah, the wash is better than mask, better than everything. And so look into that, everybody. We have that over at TWC. I love that stuff. Apparently, I was trying to find the name of the woman, or I think it's a female that notified me that nasal. Yeah, that RFK Jr. has been sworn in now, apparently. So that is great, amazing news. And back to the World Health Organization, I was looking at the vaccine schedules, and I noticed that hepatitis B is required the first day of life. And I was like, why are they doing that? Guess who mandates it? World Health Organization. And why do they mandate it? I was involved in some of the research back in the early 80s around this hepatitis B vaccine. And the concern at that time was maternal fetal transmission of hepatitis in China. In China. And we also worried a little bit about healthcare providers of drug addicts. Do you imagine in this country that if a woman is an IV drug user, she doesn't get tested for hepatitis B while she's pregnant? Of course she does. And that child will get the hepatitis B vaccine. But for the entire country to get it, take it if you want it later. And I took it for healthcare protection. But to give it the first day of life, World Health Organization, in the name of equity, everybody's getting it. And it's a bizarre, bizarre thing.
I was at a Christmas party in Hollywood, and a lot of big Hollywood types were there. And I was talking to this one guy who was actually a doctor, and they're all just repeating what they see in the New York Times or here on MSNBC. They're like, "Oh, I'm afraid of that RFK. He's going to take away the polio vaccine," and I'm like, "He's not going to take away the polio vaccine.
So
he just wants safety." And I said, "Did you know that when we were kids, I think I got maybe 4, 5, 6 vaccine shots maybe. And then now I said, do you know how many it is now? It's 72. And his eyes, I was like, big as saucers. He's like 72.
You don't know this?
Yes. He didn't
they don't
know this.
That?
And then I told him, I said, the first vaccine they give is the hepatitis B vaccine. And he's like, what? I go, exactly. Why would they do that? The only way you can get that is through intravenous. Go ahead.
I asked my hairdresser today what her child has had vaccination-wise, because I said, RFK Jr.'s, and she's like, what? Who's that? Anyways, I said, what vaccines have your kids had, or has your daughter had? She said, well, she had the ones when she was born that they told her to get, which is K2 and Hep B, probably. And then one when she was 1 year old. But since then, she hasn't had anything. And I was like, I don't know. It's confusing because those are probably the ones you shouldn't get. But
no,
I'm hoping that we can educate a bigger audience here.
Vaccines are good. But just like every medical intervention,
but she didn't
the doctor, the patient, and the mom.
She just said, they just give them to me.
Needs to make that decision for every case.
It wasn't COVID.
With risk-reward being considered. And then we need to hold vaccines to the same standard as every other pharmaceutical product, which is what RFK plans to do. That's all. Very simple. No big deal.
That's all.
And that's all. And then, but the hepatitis B shocked me. Because I was involved with that. It's not to protect kids from becoming IV drug users, Jimmy. It's protecting them from their IV drug using mom, of which there are about 600 in this country per year. And so every child is getting the vaccine. And you don't think those 600 moms are identified before the delivery, and then give those kids the vaccine by all means. But it was done by the World Health Organization. They were the mandating body.
And who controls them? Bill Gates. And who's bragged about his return on investment in vaccines? Bill Gates. And here, I'll tell you one more story about Bill Gates, is that when Donald Trump was president the first time, I heard this story from Bill Gates. He told this story. And that Donald Trump had, RFK was talking to Trump to get him to do a vaccine commission in the Senate or in the Congress. And Trump told Bill Gates about this, and Bill Gates says, no, don't do that. That would be a bad thing. That's a direct quote. I'm not making it up. Don't do that. That would be a bad thing. And I'm like, why would you be against
be bad thing?
That would be bad thing. That's how he said it. And I'm like, why would you have that reaction to a vaccine commission? They're going to look into the safety of vaccines. And what are they going to find out, Bill? They're going to find out that they're safe and effective. And then people will have even more confidence taking them, right? Isn't that what they're going to find out?
Yeah,
so why would you be afraid of that? That doesn't make any sense. So what is he? Well, he's afraid. He's afraid of it, the science that shows that there isn't safety trials, that they don't have the safety tests, and that there are negative studies that they don't want people to know about. So that's what that is. So that's not informed consent. I'll tell you that. That's about less informed non-consent. So again, Bill Gates is a big scammer, megalomaniac, and that's why I have a healthy skepticism of all billionaires.
Well, let's leave it at that, and we will see if you develop any Elon derangement or Trump derangement, because as you pointed out, it can go either way. You can get too enthusiastic about one of these guys or get disturbed by their behavior and start to think they're up to something they're not. but it's definitely worth having a skeptical stance in relation to everything in the press, everything in the government, and everything in science. You're supposed to have skepticism. That's the nature of the endeavor, is to sit with a skeptical eye, a jaundiced eye, as you evaluate the evidence. And hopefully the null hypothesis becomes informative with time. Jimmy, again, we will look at jimmydore.com for the upcoming comedy appearances. Jimmy Dore Show. What's coming up today? I imagine you have a show this afternoon.
No, I do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we're off today. That's why I can do shows like this, and we're back at it tomorrow at 1:30. So we're 3 to 6 Pacific time, Monday and Wednesday, and on Friday we do an earlier show, 1 to 4. So just go to jimmydore.com.
We're in direct competition.
Oh, are we really?
We compete with you. Yeah, on Wednesday, 3 o'clock. So.
Oh, okay. Well,
We're only there.
Thank you for bringing your audience with you today. It was really good. We have a huge audience over on X and also on Rumble today. And thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate
Jimmy Dore, it was predicted that his show would be successful.
It we were talking about psychics before the mics turned on because I want to have Jimmy on my show, Calling Out with Susan Pinsky, which airs today at 3 p.m. We're going to do a love special with Dr. Drew and Damona Hoffman.
Let's let Jimmy go so we can talk more about that. Jimmy,
we'll get Jimmy on. You can get a psychic reading too.
Great to see you. We're traveling a bunch too in the next couple months, really. But we'll get that bourbon. What's it called? The Bourbon Street Bourbon House. What was that steakhouse called?
Yeah, Bourbon Steak. That's
Steak.
it. In Glendale.
We will get there. We'll do it.
Okay.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Okay.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it. We do, everybody. And then Susan, tell them about your show. It's 3 o'clock today.
Today we have a Love Line-like show. We're just going to have fun with love and talk about people's love lives. And if anybody wants to ask a love question of Dr. Drew, email me at callingout@drdrew.com and we'll try to get you on the show.
Yes. I'm looking at all these. Look at the Rumble rants, all those. What does that mean? All these different sort of rollers going. And I don't know what that all is, but thank you for that. Here's coming up. Robert Epstein on Tuesday. Robbie Starbuck.
Are they giving you money?
I don't know. USAID whistleblower on the 26th. Emily's been hard at work. U.S. Congresswoman Harriet Hageman coming in on March 5th. We have a ton of show ahead. Please join us again today at 3 o'clock, all of the usual places. We'll be back on the air again, and we'll see you.
It's raining, and it's Dr. Drew and Dr. Sue together on Loveline.
See you then. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis,